Millions of photos are taken every single day. Boring landscapes, failed street photos, whatever this is. And of those millions of photos, only a few actually make an impression on you. I guess that's what makes great photographers' work so special. It cuts through the noise of boring photos. So today I'm going to talk about what makes photos forgettable and how you can make sure your work shines through all the shit. And this video isn't about shooting f1.8 or buying a really expensive lens or relinquishing your soul to the Dark Lord. This is about the real things that make a real difference. So let's get right to it rather than talking any more shit. I'm going to start by talking about something that I see all the time. And later in the video, I'm going to talk about some real game changers. And this first thing that makes photos forgettable is something that's real simple, but it can be really hard to kind of break out of. Most people take photos of the same old shit in the same old way. Like you go to a new city, you see a tower and you think, oh, that's a cool tower. I'm going to take a picture of it. And it's the same picture that everyone who visits that city takes. And one of the reasons why it's forgettable is it could be anyone's photograph. Now, I'm not saying that you should not take pictures of well-known things, but I think you should really think about how you're photographing it if you are. Maybe it should be a small aspect of the image rather than the whole subject. Maybe the way people are interacting around it is more interesting than the subject itself. If you think outside the box just slightly, then your pictures will be different than 90% of other photographers, just because a lot of people are quite automatic with the way they shoot. They don't really think too much about it. And if you get to a location and you actually start to explore, go down different streets, try to find interesting things rather than just the tourist stuff, then your work will automatically be way more interesting. And this leads me on to the second thing, and I genuinely think that this is one of the most important things in photography, in film, in life in general. Like, how many times do you find yourself looking at a photo on Instagram or whatever, and the picture doesn't take you on a journey? It doesn't make you question anything. It doesn't really make you think about anything at all. Well, photos are forgettable if they don't tell a story. Your photos should make your viewer ask questions. How is this image like this? Who is this person? What is actually really going on here? This is the same in so many walks of life. If you're writing a book, if you're making a film, story and curiosity is what keeps the viewer, the participant, engaged. The more of a story, the more curiosity that we can create in an image, the more compelling it is, the more likely it is to stick with the viewer. So how do you do this? Well, you need a subject or subjects, people, animals, a building. It could be quite a small aspect, really. And you need to not give away all the answers. I think if it's completely obvious to the viewer how this image could happen or how it exists or what it actually means, then the curiosity loop is opened and closed upon looking at the photo. Whereas when you're not sure, then that loop is still open. And not only that, your images will be perceived differently by everyone that views them because they're kind of filling in the blanks themselves. It's kind of up to them what the picture actually means. And next up, I've got the second part of this photographic puzzle. But first, if you're trying to find your way through the crazy world of film photography, then I've got the perfect thing for you. A couple of months ago, I put together this course that I wished I had when I first started shooting film. This is a course that should take you from a complete beginner to taking banging photos on the regular. And if you use the code FILMY50 at checkout, then you'll get 50% off because I really love you guys and I don't know, it's just a nice thing to do. But anyway, let's get back to why most photos are forgettable. And the next point ties in perfectly with the last points. I don't know if you feel the same way, but if you go on social media these days, a lot of the work that does really well on social media isn't necessarily great photography. It's great content. And I think because of that, a generation of photographers are growing up thinking that that's the kind of photography that the world needs. But the truth is, I mean, not all the time, some good photographers are big on Instagram, but a lot of the time, it's generic shit. It often lacks any identity, which makes it forgettable. And finding identity is hard, and if you're growing as a photographer, then it'll probably change over time. But the question I ask myself in order to try and maintain my identity, or at least continue to grow it, is what would I photograph, or how would I photograph if no one ever saw my work? What would fulfill me? What would make me feel good about my work? This will give you a lot more of an understanding of what actually matters to you, rather than worrying about social media and all that nonsense. And identity is one of the most important things that makes your work memorable. When you look at Saul Leiter's work, you will always remember it. If you look at, so many other of the big photographers, William Eggleston, whoever else that you're influenced by, it's identifiable and you know that it's theirs when you look at it. And finally, I've got something practical that so many photographers just don't seem to grasp. But how many times do you look at people's work on Instagram or wherever you see it, and it just looks flat? It feels 2D. Well, that's because what they're missing is depth. And depth can be created in a few ways. I mean, one of the most common ways that especially beginner photographers tend to create depth is by shooting wide open at f1.8 or whatever. But a much better way of creating depth is through light, layers of light. This gives photographs that 3D feel. It feels immersive. It feels like it could be real. It feels like you could step right into it. And this makes photographs way more memorable, and it resonates way more with the viewer. To create depth with light, you need layers of light, and that can be kind of difficult when you're just a photographer. You're not using any external lights or extra lighting or whatever. But if you think of layers of light as, shadow, then light, then shadow, then light, you might begin to see this much more just day to day as you're walking around and taking photos. When it comes to shooting people, then trying to photograph from their shadow side is a really effective way of being able to show that depth. The face doesn't need to be entirely in shadow, but maybe you can see here, this side is a bit more shadowy and this side is in light. Because I'm doing YouTube, it doesn't really matter that much to me that this looks really, cinematic. But you would probably shoot from diagonally this angle, because then we've got shadow and light, then there'll be some light and some shadow in the background. The more you look for depth, the more you'll see it. You'll see it in every single movie that you ever watch, and a lot of good photography. I'm not saying that every single great photograph has depth, but usually that would be the case. So if you combine depth, story, identity, and trying not to take pictures of the same old shit and being a bit more creative, then your photos are much more likely to be memorable rather than completely forgettable. And as always, I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you're at the start of your film photography journey and you really need that guidance, go and take a look at my course. You won't regret it. It's really good. It's pretty much as cheap as I could make it as well. And of course, drop me a subscribe if you haven't done already, because it's the coolest thing that you can do for free to support my channel. It helps me to make a little bit more money in the future, and then hopefully I can make even better videos and just continue doing as good as I can do. Thanks so much for watching. Maybe go to a theme park this week, or take up Tai Chi or skateboarding. I don't know. Take care.